Hi. Hi, everybody. It's been a while since we've done one of these, so a little bit of a learning curve to get back into it.
Yeah, and Happy New Year, or
Yeah.
Happy 2024.
Yeah.
We're actually still on holiday, so this is going to be quite a relaxed chat with us, isn't it?
Yeah, we're just, taking a chill vibe, much more chill than we normally go, although we're usually pretty chill, but we are still on our summer holidays here in Auckland. And yeah, so we're just here today to have a bit of a chat with you about resilient minds, about 2023, how it's gone. Let's look at 2024, how we might be able to do things a bit differently. And we have a signature program called Resilient Minds, which is why we've called this the Resilient Minds Conversation. We're not going to be doing any hard sell because, as we say, we're on holiday, but it's just like chatting about it a little bit and then talking about generally what it means to be neurodiverse and what it feels like. We look at things quite differently, don't we? So we were talking earlier about, what did we really want to talk about with everyone? And really what we were thinking about is how the new year can feel for people that are neurodiverse. And Vanessa, being the neurodiverse one amongst us, probably has more thoughts around that. So I mean, if you'd like to comment or anything and let us know, how are you feeling about the new year? How are you feeling about, entering another year? Does it feel great? Does it feel full of opportunity? Or do you feel a bit trepidatious about it? Let us know in the comments if you can.
Yeah.
So,
and if you've got any questions, please just put them in the comments. So, our conversation when we started talking about what we wanted to talk about in this was around just that whole end of year, like how stressful the end of year is. And we did a little bit of posting and newsletters about it, saying that I think it's really hard when you're neurodiverse because the end of the year is a real hard deadline. So often when you're ADHD and dyslexic like I am, I often don't make a deadline quite when I should, but then I'll kind of know that I've got that bit of extra time up my sleeve. And the end of the year, you don't have that. There's that real hard deadline of Christmas. So we were talking about how stressful the end of the year is. And I think the new year is a really double-edged sword for people who are neurodiverse, because on the one hand, I always used to feel like that's going to be a completely blank slate. This is the year that I'm going to be organized. This is the year that I'm going to start feeling really good about myself and achieve goals. And I'd write these massive lists, or I'd come up with my word of the year.
The word of the year.
The word of the year.
Yeah.
And there was all of that kind of excitement of it being new, and I'd order a planner, and there was endless possibility. But the flip side of that was often that I was exhausted. I was exhausted by the year that had just gone. And as I've said, the end of the year is really stressful for neurodiverse people. Plus, you've got all the family stuff going on. I mean, we were talking about that.
Absolutely.
As well,
and I really see it, being a neurotypical person and working with a neurodiverse person and knowing lots of neurodiverse people as well, having them in my family. I really see that end of year stress and how differently it affects you to how it affects me. Now, we all get it, don't we? We all get that end of year stress.
Busy, isn't it?
So busy, so much going on, but it's different for me than it is for you. And I think, you find it much harder to deal with it.
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely. And I think that is a really good point to make. Becky and I, if you don't know who we are, we are Remarkable Minds, and we've been friends for 20 plus years. So we've known each other a long time. And Becky kind of knew me when I was at my, I don't want to say worst, but when I didn't know that I was neurodiverse and I couldn't understand why my life was in such chaos, how much stress I used to carry, how overwhelmed I was a lot of the time without realizing why. So we can draw on quite a lot of lived experiences.
Absolutely.
And what I was going to say is, I can see it in Becky, you I can do this and I can do this, and then you kind of start winding down. You start kind of but in a good way. I mean, you start kind of making that switch to this is going to be about family and it's Christmas and I don't want it to be stressed. And whereas I'm on the other side, going, oh my God, I've got so much to do.
It always amazes me, and you always take on more.
I know.
It's always you think your plate's full, and then I've said yes to do this, and I'm like, why? Why? Oh, because I can, because I've got time. I've got like 5 spare minutes here. So I'm going to do this extra dinner party.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And you were cooking for like days before Christmas, weren't you?
Yeah.
And I think part of that as well is that need for everything to be the way you see it in your mind as well. That neurodiverse thing of, I have a picture in my mind of what Christmas or whatever is going to look like, and I have to work really hard to make that picture actually happen. And then you put yourself under so much pressure to make that happen, and it doesn't actually have to look like that.
No, but I think, you've touched on something quite good there, in that, neurodiverse individuals, we are visual thinkers. So I do have this image of what Christmas is going to be like, but what I don't see is the time or the steps that I need to make that happen. So it is quite interesting. It takes a long time for me to actually switch off over Christmas.
Absolutely. And you fight it.
I do fight it, because my ADHD brain finds it hard to be doing nothing.
Yeah. So I literally have to force her to take time off. Literally. We've just had this conversation where she's saying, I'm coming back to work next week. And I'm saying, no, you're not. But I am. I'm just going to do 2 days. No, I'm not. So, yeah, I mean, that is a real trait of yours, I think. That.
Yeah.
And that difficulty with switching off, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And so you almost don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because then, it's just too hard to then switch. It's hard to switch back on again.
Exactly.
Anyway, that isn't what we're here really to talk about.
No,
but it is interesting.
But I think, hopefully this is resonating with a few of you out there, because, this is how we approach neurodiversity. We approach it from that emotional perspective and from that whole person perspective and what it's really like. So although we're kind of talking about how difficult it is for me to switch off and, the stress coming into the new year, I'm not alone in that. And I think we were actually just discussing earlier that actually this year is probably one of the first years in a long time where I haven't got really, really low at this time of year. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But one of the big ones, I think, is, yes, I did have all those pictures of how I wanted Christmas to be. But for the first time, I didn't really get down on myself if I didn't achieve it. I know that that's my tendency. I know my tendency is to be a perfectionist and want to do everything. And I now know myself well enough, and I understand my neurodiversity, and I've done a lot of work, that it was like, that's okay. Yeah. It wasn't the end of the world.
You're definitely much better now at letting go of things and not sort of working till midnight to fold the napkins a certain way, which I'm joking, but a few years ago, that would definitely have been something that would have been, hard for you to not have it exactly how you saw it. So what we're really talking about here is that you've had the stress of the whole year, which, as we know, for neurodiverse people, whether you work or whether you don't, just showing up in the world and not being able to really be your true and honest self, in the world is really hard. It's very exhausting. It's very, very tiring. There's lots of stats out there about how hard it is for neurodiverse people and how much harder they have to work to just, maintain. So you come into the end of the year and then you have all that stress and anxiety around Christmas. I mean, maybe, there are some people that it isn't stressful for, but I would say for the majority it is, because there's a lot of social expectation. There's a lot of pressure. There's often spending time with family who, it can be challenging if they don't really understand you and how you operate.
There's a lot of planning.
A lot of organizing.
A lot of to-do lists.
Diary management. Absolutely. A lot of organization. So that is, a very stressful time of year anyway. And then we're into the new year and everyone's new year, new you, let's have a fabulous new year. And maybe you do have that excitement of this is going to be a fantastic new year, but maybe you also in the back of your mind have the realization that you thought that last year. Yeah. And the year before that. Yeah. And the year before that. Yeah. And that maybe it didn't work out quite how you thought it was going to work out, you know?
And like I said, I've got a cupboard full of diaries and planners that I used to buy with great enthusiasm in January. And I've tried all sorts. I've tried all sorts of different ones. And they would always last for a week or a couple of weeks. But then, my ADHD brain would revert to its usual state, and I wouldn't use them. So the difference this year is A, I didn't buy one, but B, I don't actually feel bad about it anymore. And I think that's what we really want to share with you, is that it is actually possible to feel okay about yourself, because at the end of the day, being neurodiverse does have its ups and downs. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. There is no magical cure, you know, and in fact, there's nothing wrong with you, so you don't actually need curing. But it's just about that acceptance, that self-acceptance. And I think that was one of the themes that we kind of wanted to talk about today, because that's actually one of the most powerful things you can do. It's work on the inside. It's the internal work that you do.
Absolutely. And we were talking about, you know, there seems to be at the moment a proliferation of apps and self-help things that you can do out there that's going to fix you, and it's going to make your ADHD better, or, you know, make your dyslexia disappear. You know, but we all know we buy an app, we use it for a week, and then we don't use it anymore. And maybe it's helpful every now and then in the moment. But what we're talking about here, and what we really are passionate about doing, is really getting to the core of who you are, understanding yourself, understanding the challenges that you experience, and understanding that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with being neurodiverse. I mean, let's face it, the world is not really set up for neurodiverse people. No. But if you can really understand yourself and understand what's going on for you, and how the past, that's what we're talking about, you know, your past experiences, be it last year, be it 10 years ago, however long ago, how that has affected you, and how that experience in the world builds up and builds up and builds up to layer into self-beliefs. And you know, we talk about the reticular activation system, where you internalize these things that you hear. And we know that, you know, we go back to school and talk about school experiences, because we know that at school, neurodiverse children are told 20,000 times that they're wrong, or that they've got something wrong. And if you hear that repeatedly, what does that do to you? You know?
And you really do have this sense, you know, this is how I lived most of my life. I had a sense that I just wasn't quite good enough. You know, there was always this sense of failure. I could have done better. I should have done better. I should be doing more. I could be doing more. But the actual fact was, I was already working quite hard, and I still wasn't achieving as much as I wanted to. So all that does is puts you in a real loop of kind of being hard on yourself. And I would say every neurodiverse client we've ever worked with is hard on themselves. And I think even if you appear confident on the outside, that doesn't always translate through to an inner confidence, because, you know, you've known me a long time, and I always appeared very confident, didn't I?
Very, absolutely. And if you met you for the first time, you know, like 15 years ago, you would think, wow, she's a confident woman. But that wasn't what was actually going on inside. And we work with people who are in high-powered jobs, who have got massive responsibility, and who have done really well in their lives, and still, even though they've done really well, still inside at their core, they believe that there's something wrong with them. And that they're not quite getting it right. And I remember you always used to talk about, you felt like there was a manual for life, and yours was missing some chapters. Like there was just some stuff that I didn't really get, and I didn't really understand. And I think that is the case. That is a really good sort of analogy for most neurodiverse people. It's like, why is this so hard? What don't I know? What am I missing? What should I know that I don't know? What I haven't been told, you know? And that's what we look at. That's what we talk about, is that, you know, really understanding how you fit into the world, and not just on a practical level, but also on an emotional level. So we know, don't we, that you know, neurodiversity does come with an emotional toll on lots of levels. You know, be it stress, anxiety, be it swinging emotions. You know, there's lots of different
not
ways.
Being able to express your emotions, and I think that's one of the core pieces of what we do, actually, is it's a foundational shift. You know, we actually help you gain solid foundations. And that's different. That's different from getting an app that'll help you be organized. It's different from, you know, external work that you can do. And there's still a really good place for that. But it's actually doing that work inside to give you that solid sense of self, because I would say that's what I never had. So I was always trying to adapt myself to the situation around me, or the people around me. And in work, we see this a lot. You know, we see this in workplaces, don't we? And do you know what? It's exhausting not being able to be your true self. It is exhausting having to put on that front, whatever that front may be, that takes a lot of energy. And then you need to function to do your job.
Then you need to do your job on top of that. I mean, it's exhausting. And, so many times we work in different organisations, and organisations say, well, we have accommodations available.
Yeah.
People just need to come and ask us for them. You need to just tell us what accommodations you need, and we're happy to help. But most neurodiverse people, or a lot of neurodiverse people, don't really know what accommodations they need, because they just know that things are hard. They don't really know why things are hard, And then B, having the ability and the confidence to stand up and say, hey, I'm struggling and I need this help. It's something that a lot of people just can't do.
Yeah.
A lot of people are out there hiding from their work colleagues, their bosses, or whatever. And we see this all the time with the people that we interact with in different organizations, where people will say to us, should I tell my boss that I'm neurodiverse?
Yeah.
I'm really worried about the consequences that it's going to have. And if you don't have the confidence in yourself to really know what you're looking for from that conversation, it can be really, really difficult.
Or what you need,
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the areas that we wanted to talk about, because, there are more diagnoses happening now, although the wait is still very long to get an official diagnosis, and it is quite an expensive process. And it's not always a positive one, let me tell you. I've spoken to a lot of people who have received their diagnosis, and it's actually been quite a negative experience for them. But then what? What do you do after that? I think you fixate so much on getting that diagnosis. Okay, I'm going to find out what the problem is. But what we see in many areas is there's no next steps then. You might get an email with a couple of bullet points on, but that isn't what you need. What you need is actually a structured way of understanding what that means for you in your life. What does that mean for you as a person? What does that mean in your relationships? I think what struck me when you were talking is, yes, you hide at work, but a lot of people are hiding in their relationships as well,
true.
and their families.
True. Friendships,
all sorts of things. So it isn't just at work.
No, you're right. It's more than that. It's all the time, isn't it? Absolutely. And that's I find that really, really hard to see people not being able to be themselves and having to pretend. And I know a lot of neurodiverse people, and I have a lot of them in my family, and I see a lot of that sort of that insecurity of who you really are, and that sort of what's the word, like mirroring other people, and whoever you're with, you become like that person. People pleasing in a way, but that comes from a lack of surety about who you really are, and how you really operate in the world. And that's what we really want to address, is that core understanding of yourself. So self-belief, self-understanding, where that comes from, and how it can be, as we've talked about just now, layered in a negative way, and things that you hear and things that you experience can be internalized as who you are, when in fact that's not the case at all. And so you become very unsure of yourself, and you become very negative about yourself. And you can change that.
Yeah,
it's the good news.
Absolutely,
you can change that.
Absolutely,
there are things that you can do, and to make that change. And we always talk about our sort of 3-step process, don't we? Which is awareness, acceptance, and action. So the first step has to be awareness. You have to really understand yourself and who you are, and what you believe about yourself, really, before you can accept it. And once you can accept it, as you were saying, accepting yourself and being able to sort of be almost not honest, but like clear about who you are, allows you to then take action.
And I think you might feel that you already know quite a lot about neurodiversity, and maybe you feel like you have a really good handle on your dyslexia or your ADHD or ASD or whatever it is that's going on for you. But I think we come at it from a very different angle. A lot of the information that I've seen has to do with external circumstances. So it's how you function in the workplace, or how you function in learning, or your behaviors, or it's all external. And I think that's the work that we do. That's where it's very different, because we we look at you from inside. You know, we actually bring your awareness to your internal self and the reasons that you are the way you are.
Yeah.
And then, as Becky so beautifully put, then it's about acceptance. And, you know, earlier when I was saying this year I'm not as stressed as usual, that's just down to awareness and acceptance. Those are the two key things that have happened, is that I understand that I'm not going to get everything done. I no longer feel bad about it now, you know, and it's such a different place to be. It's so much calmer, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm just
sorry,
reading.
I got a little bit distracted because a comment popped up. Sorry,
I was reading it as well. Thank you so much,
Christine,
for posting a little comment there. And I'm just going to read it. Sorry, just give me a moment to read it. I don't want to be trying to talk it and read it. I want to give it attention.
Yeah.
And learning support teacher, there's an explanation of how you should perform. Exhausted. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this time of year, you're already steeling yourself ready to have to go back to school, which is, you know, it's a hard environment.
Yeah. And I really like how you've said there is that, you know, you're kind of empowering your students, aren't you? But then who's empowering you? And I think as well, there comes to a certain point as an adult. I know I used to feel selfish, or I used to feel almost self-absorbed in a way, because I was like, nobody else seemed to spend this much time thinking about themselves or trying to figure out what's wrong with them. You know, it had quite a negative connotation. But of course, the problem was the things I was trying to help myself were all for neurotypical brains. So they didn't work. It's like buying a planner at the beginning of the year and expecting that to sort out my ADHD time management. It's never going to work.
No, and you said earlier, didn't you? It's like having a Ferrari and not knowing how to drive it. It's like, you know, it's amazing. We really think that the neurodiverse brain is an amazing thing. And once you know how to use it in the right way, it's phenomenal. But if you've never been taught how to use it in the right way, it just feels like a struggle. It just feels really hard all the time, doesn't it? And this exhaustion that you're talking about, Christine, that's something that we see from so many people. People are just exhausted by being neurodiverse and operating in a neurotypical world, because the world is just not set up and you don't understand yourself, do you?
No.
So you're just working really, really hard all the time to try and work out how you should be behaving and reacting and operating in the world. And it's just exhausting. It is really tiring.
And actually, I think I really like the fact that you've brought up imposter syndrome, because, you know, that is something that many people experience, not just neurodiverse people. You know, neurotypical people experience imposter syndrome. But for me, there's a difference right there, because I have seen in neurotypical people who potentially am like, oh, can I do this? Am I qualified enough? You know, they might go do a little bit of research, or they'll read a book, or they'll, you know, I don't know, do a little bit of work, and then they're, oh yeah, I've got it now. And that's the difference, because when you're neurodiverse, you never get to that point. You know, you never ever get to that point without doing the work. You never get to that point where you're like, actually, I am okay. I can do this, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting, Vanessa, because I think for me, if I don't know something, I'll be like, oh, well, I'll just go and find out.
Yeah.
I have that expectation and that understanding that because I've had a positive experience of learning throughout my life, if I want to find something out, I just go and look it up and I learn it. Whereas for you, that's not the same. No. It's like there's the expectation already layered in there that learning will possibly be unsuccessful. And I'm sure, you know, you're not alone in that. That's for many people who have had negative experiences of learning throughout their life. They would not have that belief that if I don't know it or I don't understand it, I can just go and find it.
You know, and I'm going to share something. I'll be quite open here. When I first got my Davis Dyslexia license, I'll never forget. You know, it took 2 years to train. It's very robust. And when I got the email saying that I had succeeded, I remember crying, and then, but not with happiness. I remember thinking, but I've fudged this somehow. Like, they don't know that I can't do it. I don't actually know this. And my lovely tutor actually phoned me, and I shared this with her, and she said, Vanessa, I passed you because you're capable. And I think that's the word I never ever used to feel was capable.
Yes, capable.
So that is that self-belief coming through. That is that layers of negative experience, of instability, of not being secure in who you are. that's how it shows up, isn't
absolutely.
it?
And so that's like one of the self-beliefs that we could look at, isn't it? You know, that self-belief that I would not be successful at learning.
Yeah.
And that's actually not necessarily true. It's just maybe you haven't been learning in the way that works, not the right way, but the way that works for your brain. Because school is not set up for the neurodiverse brain, it's set up for the neurotypical brain. And so most neurodiverse people will go through school feeling that it's really, really hard, or that they've really, really struggled to learn in that way.
Or that it's just a fluke.
Yes, that it's just a fluke. Yes.
That's what I used to think.
Absolutely.
If I passed something, I was like, well, that's just a fluke.
But that's it, isn't it? That's like one of the things that we talked about somewhere, I can't remember, was that sort of idea that for neurodiverse people, if it's easy, then it's not valid.
Yeah.
If it's easy, it's not, it's not valuable.
Yeah.
It has to be hard work to be valuable in the world.
Yeah.
And that's just not true. That's just not true. Neurodiverse people have amazing natural talents that I don't have and would love to have. But they're just not A, aware of them, or B, valued. They don't value their own natural talents. And so they feel like they're constantly comparing themselves to a standard that they don't meet up to. And it's not realistic, People like that Albert Einstein thing, isn't it? If you compare if you ask a fish to climb a tree, it's going to spend its life feeling that it's useless.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and I think that circles back to the program that we've developed. It does take you through that cycle of awareness, acceptance, and action. And I think as Becky just said, the awareness of what our neurodiverse talents are, we might have a little bit, but I'm a true believer of understanding the purpose and the reason, because most neurodiverse individuals, actually, you need to give us the reason and then we'll get engaged. So we actually kind of dive into the actual neuroscience and, as Becky mentioned, the reticular activation systems and your self-beliefs, but also your emotions. And I think for me, it's the impact that my neurodiversity has on my emotional state, on my ability to communicate my emotions, on my ability to even know what my emotions are. That was a real, I don't want to use the word awakening because that sounds a bit out there, but it really increased my awareness. And that's the type of thing that actually started leading to my acceptance of myself. And I guess I really can't emphasize to you how much that can change what you're feeling right now. And as we've mentioned, you can have apps, and maybe you're taking medication or whatever works for you. We're really open to people have got to find what works for them.
Absolutely.
But if you can start changing those foundations inside and getting that awareness and acceptance of yourself, of your true neurodiverse self, then that's actually what starts changing your life. And I have a lot of admiration for Becky because, she has a lot of skills where it's patience. She has a lot of patience, but she also has the ability to see the neurodiverse talents, but also how they fit into the neurotypical world. Because at the end of the day, we do operate in a neurotypical world.
Exactly.
It wouldn't be any good us being in a neurodiverse world. That would be chaos. And I'm not too sure if I'm making sense here, but I guess what I wanted to say is that's one of the things we talk about. When you actually know your own strengths, you can see how they fit in to that working world or to your friendships,
Absolutely. And I think that's absolutely key, isn't it? It's that we're not going to be able to change the world. We can't wave a magic wand and make the world more neurodiverse friendly, unfortunately. But we really want neurodiverse people to understand themselves so that they can advocate for themselves and they can express themselves. Because I know many of the time I can see in you when you're not feeling great and you're, struggling with your emotions and you don't want to you can't find the words to talk about it. And I have to kind of encourage you and pull it out, and I take the time to do that.
Yes,
but not everybody has the ability, the skills, or the patience to do that. And I think to have the language, to have the knowledge, to have the awareness around your own emotions and what's going on for you, and to be able to express them in a way that you can feel secure about without feeling like, am I talking absolute nonsense here? You know, I don't know. I don't know. You know, I don't know what I'm saying. And that's one of the skills that we work on, is that ability to be able to express your emotions and understand your emotions, and be more open about who you are, rather than constantly trying to be somebody that you're not, and constantly feeling that you're less than the people around you. And I know that that's something that a lot of neurodiverse people feel, is that if they're in a situation, be it a work environment, a social environment, and perhaps over, you know, Christmas and New Year, you might have been in lots of social situations where you might have felt, I'm not as good as the other people in this room. I don't know as much as they know. They're going to find me out. You know, that is a really common experience for people with neurodiversity, and that instability is a really negative thing, and it doesn't help you operate well in the world. It doesn't help you have confidence. And so what we really want is for you to be able to build your confidence, but from a solid base of knowing yourself and knowing who you are. That's what we're really passionate about. We want to see neurodiverse people live an amazing, successful life and feel calm and centered and confident and capable. Yes, and that's what we really are passionate about working on.
And because we bring a lot of lived experience into this, you know, as we've disclosed, you know, we've been friends for a long time, and now there's some words coming up, so I'm going to try not to get distracted. You read, I'll keep talking. Thank you so much for putting some comments in. It's really lovely. And I've completely forgotten what I was going to say.
I don't know.
I was talking about
terrified. So this, you know, Christina's saying that, Helena is saying that she has tried using Filofax and diary and couldn't finish it, and didn't know that you were dyslexic. And excuse me. And does that? I mean, probably find that then continues to build that feeling of failure. It's like, hey, I'm going to be really amazingly organized this year. I'm going to buy new Filofax. I'm going to get myself a self-help book. I'm going to sort my life out. And then, you know, a month or 2 months in, you're like, oh, I can't do it. It's too difficult. And that, how does that make you feel? You know, that just continues then to build that feeling of, I'm no good. I'm not good enough. You know, I can't even do that. I can't even get myself organized. So what's wrong with me? You know, and you always tend to think that anything that happens is your fault.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas I think it's somebody else's fault.
It's quite amazing, actually. It's quite. It was a real revelation when I realised that, you know, Becky, if something goes wrong, I immediately assume it's me that's got it wrong. And not only that, you know, I was just thinking back. I often used to say sorry all the time. I'd walk into a room. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, I just used to say sorry constantly. And I don't do that anymore now, because I've accepted myself. I know my strengths. And I think that's another thing about this course. And I am going to come back to something Christine has said. But before I do that, another thing is your brain's actually amazing. And being neurodiverse is actually incredible. Once you know how to use your brain, and our emotion, we have an amazing capacity for emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is actually really highly valued. So is creativity, but we get in the way of it because we're too scared. And as Christine said, you're in fight or flight constantly. And that's how I used to live my life. You're in that fear of being judged. So your creative talents can't flow. Your problem solving doesn't work as well. You don't have that emotional intelligence. And we never really get taught how to be emotionally intelligent, do we?
No, we don't. No, we don't. Absolutely. But, you know, like we do a lot of presentations to corporate organizations as well. And one of the things that we talk about are the sort of top 10 job skills that are going to be required for the future. And actually, most of them are those sorts of skills, aren't they? That emotional intelligence, that sort of creativity, that problem solving, that out of the box thinking. Do we say that anymore? Is that an old fashioned phrase? I don't know. You know, all of those natural talents that come along with being neurodiverse. And that's amazing and that's fantastic. And we're finding that organizations are now purposefully going out and trying to employ neurodiverse people in order to get these skills into their businesses. But then what they're not doing is creating the environment within the workplace to enable those people to actually step into those talents.
Yeah. And as we've been saying, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but you can't step into your talents until you have that bit of compassion for yourself.
Yes, that's a good word.
That awareness of why you are like you are. You know, I was busy telling my son that it was amazing that he was dyslexic, that he was so creative, and it didn't matter that he couldn't spell. And, you know, I was saying, look how good you are at Lego, and really building him up. And yet when I found out about my dyslexia, I didn't tell anybody for 6 months because I was too ashamed.
And that really resonates with what Christine said. And I don't think everyone can see the comments that Christine's put, but she's saying, you know, that you want your students to feel empowered and you want them to express their feelings and to do so without feeling that they're going to be judged. But do you feel the same?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you could really honestly express your own feelings and your emotions without fear of being judged? And I would say probably most people don't feel that, because there is that experience of being judged that comes from far back.
Years of it.
Yeah, that experience of I've got it wrong, I've made a mistake, I'm not good enough, you know, and that just builds and builds and builds the older you get, and you carry it with you everywhere you go. But it doesn't have to be like that. That's the amazing thing, you know, is that once you understand it, and we, you know, obviously we'll give you some tools and some amazing resources, and we do some sort of really great guided work around using your visual mind to empower you and to get you to where you really want to go. And so it can change. It can change. You don't have to keep feeling like that. You don't have to keep saying sorry all the time, Helena. You know, you can really come out of that cycle of feeling like you're not good enough and apologizing for being yourself or being who you are all the time, and have a different experience in the world. And it's not an overnight thing. You know, the thing that we do, the program that we're talking about, is a 6-week program. So we probably should talk about it. We're going to run out of time. I know we've been kind of touching on it every now and then, but it is a 6-week program, and we have sort of like short videos that you have every week with a little bit of an experience in the world. And then we have a coaching call every week, where we come together and we all kind of talk about our experiences and how did we find the content? What did we learn about ourselves? How could we do things differently? You know, what are our experiences? And we find that in that group environment, sharing those experiences is really powerful.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, you know, Becky and I have many years experience. And, you know, whilst I have my neurodiverse qualifications, as I've said, a lot of this is lived experience. And, you know, Becky's also a qualified life coach. And I think in those coaching calls, it's really, it's amazing the bonds that happens.
So quickly as well.
Which is always wonderful. But it's also a really safe place. And, you know, we've been running this course for 3 years now. And the first intake we did, we were a bit nervous about having a group call, weren't we? Because we were like, oh, are people going to want to share in front of others? Oh my gosh, it was just amazing, because people really understood they weren't on their own. There were other people just like them from all different walks of life as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we are going to invite you if you'd like to do some work with us. You know, we are really passionate about helping people, and nothing makes us happier than when we work with clients and we see that change in them. You know, that's what we love.
Absolutely.
So we are going to share with you some details. As usual, I can't remember exactly what we're going to do, because that's Becky's department.
Well, we're not doing anything exciting at all. All we're going to do is we're going to put a little QR code up on the screen. There it is. There's a QR code, and you can scan that.
Clever.
I know, right? And that will take you to the page that tells you all about the program. You know, and it just gives you some information there about who it's for, what it does, what's involved, how it works. Now, there aren't any start dates on that page, because what we decided to do was, rather than creating a hard start date, we're just going to gather together a group of people that really want to work together or really want to work with us. And then when we've got a sort of number of people that we want, then we'll get started, and we will arrange the dates and the times and all of that detail stuff when we've got our little group of people together, because this is a program that we run quite regularly, but we just thought this time we just want to do it in a more sort of gentler, gradual way, rather than doing it's closing, you know, doors closing, all of that stuff. We don't want to do all of that.
No.
It's just like, if it's something you're interested in, go and have a look. And, we'd love you to sign up. We'd love to work with you because we are so passionate about helping people and creating a different year for you this year than the year that you had last year. But yeah.
And I know that might not seem possible.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know whether you're back at work already or, or you're about to go back, and maybe your holiday's been great. Maybe spending time with your family is your happy time and you've had a bit of a relax, and now you're starting to think about going into that next year, or maybe you're already back at work. But it is possible to change. And what I would say is, this work, it is deep work, but you're supported throughout. And I would love for your life to be easier. I really would. And we can't take away all the stress in your life. There are still times where my neurodiversity trips me up. I booked a flight to the completely wrong airport in America not that long ago.
That's a story for another day.
That is a story for another day. The difference is I laugh about it now and I really don't have any more shame.
Yeah.
And that is the difference. And I think you can get to that place, you can get to that place where my lows aren't as long anymore. I can just manage my emotions that much better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, definitely. And we want that for you.
Yeah.
We want you to feel amazing, and we want you to feel secure and to sort of have that confidence to be yourself. You're dreading work. Oh no, Elena, that's sad. I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, me too. That makes my heart break.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though you like your job.
Yeah.
I know it's a real double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is.
You
it's
know?
really hard, and I think there will be a lot of neurodiverse people out there that are feeling like that. Like, once you get into it and you get back into that sort of habit of hiding yourself or whatever your coping mechanisms might be, because we all know that everyone develops their own coping mechanisms and they work for a while, but they probably are making you feel exhausted.
And actually that's a really good point there, given that we've got like 3 minutes left. But I think we do have coping mechanisms. Every neurodiverse person does. It's the cost of those coping mechanisms. So Becky touched on it earlier. I learned very early on to just not talk about what I was thinking or feeling. And so my coping mechanism is, oh, no, I'm fine. Everything's okay.
The minute you say that, I know you're not.
Damn,
it's fine.
She knows me that well. But what I mean is that was my coping mechanism. But after it became a coping mechanism, it became a habit. And actually what that did is it isolates me. It shuts me down. It really isn't good for me. So, that's the thing about coping mechanisms. And that's the way our brain works. We do it once, it works. So we keep going back to it. But your life might have changed. You might have changed. And actually it might be doing you more harm than good now, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, that just popped into my head.
And I think that's a really valid point, isn't it? Those coping mechanisms that start out as a positive thing to protect you can become a negative thing if you do them for too long. And I totally agree with you that saying, I'm fine, shuts you down and doesn't allow you to really explore what's going on and to understand what's happening for you and to work through it. And so then it becomes internalized, and that's really dangerous.
Yeah.
Really dangerous. Anyway, we're pretty much out of time.
Should we go back to the full screen? How do we do that?
I don't know.
I don't touch technology. There we go. Yay, we're back. Oh, honestly, I'm so happy that a couple of you joined us, and really thank you for sharing in the comments.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate you opening up, and I really want you to, sorry, there's my little ADHD dyslexic brain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hypervigilance and burning a candle at both ends.
Oh, I know that one quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hence, I'm not allowing her to come back to work.
It's hard though, isn't it? Because I feel guilty doing nothing. So it's really
I
interesting. Yeah. Anyway, we could do a whole nother session on that one.
Absolutely.
But if you guys have any questions for us, or you'd like to share some thoughts or comments, I believe the contact details are on the QR code in the page, are they? Maybe?
Well, it's on our website.
It's
so
on
you
our
can
website.
always contact
us through there.
You can send us an email. You can, get in touch with us on any of the social media platforms where we are. We'd love to stay in touch with you. whether you join us on the Resilient Minds course or not, we're absolutely delighted that you were here, and that, maybe just this conversation might get you thinking a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing that might not be working for you, and how you could do things slightly differently by really understanding yourselves in 2024. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. And
hopefully we'll see some of you soon.
Along the way
on our coaching calls. I can't wait.
And if not, if you want to sign up, we do weekly newsletters. We're always putting content out there. So please just reach out to us, because we really would love to help as many people as we can this year.
Absolutely. So, we really would. That's our mission. Take care, everybody. Cool. Have a lovely rest of your day, and hopefully we'll speak to some of you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.